Welcome back to the Hoop Central YouTube channel. This is Hamilton Neal joining you as always. We thank you, the viewer, as well for taking the time. Also, got another podcast coming for you here today and another UConn women's basketball podcast. Obviously, right now it's the off season. Not a whole lot is going on. So what we're going to do here in this podcast is kind of give a little preview to what next year's combination of Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd will look like. Obviously, coming into last season, the 2021-2022 season, everyone expected Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd to be the most electric duo in women's college basketball, but injuries got in the way of that. Paige Bueckers went down with the tibial plateau fracture. That left her out for nearly 3 months. Azzi Fudd had a foot injury, played 25 games during the season. Paige Bueckers only played 17 games during the 2021-2 season. So injuries got in the way of these two lighting up women's college basketball. But if they are both 100% healthy coming into this 2022 season, we should definitely see what we missed in 2021. And we're going to kind of go over some stats from 2021, what both players were able to do when they were out on the floor. When they were out on the floor together, which was not nearly as much as we expected, or not nearly as much as Husky fans hoped, they did play very well together. Paige Bueckers, again, only played 17 games last year, but in those 17 games, and missing nearly 3 months, still managed to average 14.6 points, 4 rebounds, 3.9 assists, shooting 54.4% from the floor and 35% from 3. And she did shoot a lot better from 3 during the 2020 season, her freshman campaign. That season, she shot at a 46.4% clip from 3. But again, because she only played 17 games and missed almost 3 months, we don't take that stat into account as much. It doesn't hold as much weight because she did not play a full season. Had she played a full season, her three-point percentage would have been, I think, right there around 45% like it was in 2020. And she had some big games before the injury and after the injury. The season opener against Arkansas, 34 points. That was her career high. That is still her career high at this point in time. 21 against South Florida, 23 against Seton Hall, 22 against Notre Dame in the contest where she did get injured. And then following the injury, 15 against Indiana in the Sweet 16, 27 against NC State in the Elite Eight, played 45 out of a possible 50 minutes in that game, and then 14 apiece against Stanford in the national semifinal and South Carolina in the national championship game. And a very impressive stat that I want to throw out to you is this past season, she was the only power conference guard to shoot over 60% on her two-pointers. That stat comes courtesy of her hoop stats. She was ranked in the top 1% in the country with a 2.3 assist-to-turnover ratio. So prior to the injury, after the injury, she was still super consistent shooting the basketball, especially off the ball screens and the pick-and-roll action. Paige Bueckers was still getting her own from that mid-range area, which is really the area where she's most deadly shooting the ball. It's not even as much from 3. As good as a three-point shooter as she is, when she's hitting those mid-range shots, when she's getting into those spaces and creating that space for herself off the pick-and-roll action, whether it was with Olivia Nelson-Ododa this past season, whether it was with Aaliyah Edwards, she was finding that space and still knocking down those two-pointers at a very, very consistent clip. So, all in all, very good season for Paige Bueckers given what she went through. Again, missing a ton of games for UConn, only playing 17 games this year, missing nearly 3 months of action to come back and help lead them to a national championship game appearance. This season was a huge, huge success for UConn. They exceeded expectations given all the injuries they had. Azzi Fudd was also injured during a part of this past season as well, played a little bit more than Paige Bueckers did, played 25 games this year, and averaged 12.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, and assists per game as well, while shooting 45.7% from the floor and 43% from behind the arc. Was by far UConn's best three-point shooter and was their biggest threat at that point. And yes, Caroline Ducharme played very well. When Paige Bueckers came back, she shot it very well. Evina Westbrook was pretty streaky this year. Kristen Williams was very streaky. So the player that UConn really counted on to knock down threes was Azzi Fudd. And in 15 of those 25 games that she played, she was in double-figure scoring. And 2 games really stuck out to me this past season. 25 against Tennessee at a point where Tennessee was ranked 7th in the country. It was a huge, huge contest at that point. And 29 against Villanova. And even though they lost that game by a couple of points, that was one of those games where we really saw the star power from Azzi Fudd, and we saw just how good that she can be. And those games were with Paige Bueckers out, and while UConn had a lot of injuries while Caroline Ducharme was out. So given those circumstances, she really raised her game to another level and played extremely well. Against Marquette, she had 24 points, and then 19 against NC State in the Elite Eight. That was really her big tournament performance. And that was the game where we saw both Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd playing off of each other and scoring buckets together. That was really one of the only games this season where they were both scoring consistently, and we really saw this duo come to life. And again, it's because both players were out. Both players missed time with injury. Again, Bueckers with the tibial plateau fracture, Fudd had a foot injury. So, especially in that North Carolina State game where Fudd played 49 minutes out of a possible 50 in double overtime contest, superstar-like performances from both players. And like I said, this season she led the team in three-point shooting, and she was one of only 5 Power Conference players to shoot 43% or better from 3 with 5 or more attempts per game. Clearly going to be UConn's biggest three-point threat moving forward into the future, and that's the great thing about this Paige Bueckers-Azzi Fudd duo, is Paige is a very good three-point shooter, but she really does her work, for the most part, with the mid-range, with her jump shot, getting to the rim with those floaters, again, off the pick-and-roll action with the bigs, and she's still averaging around 4 assists per game. She's going to find Azzi Fudd. She's going to find Azzi Fudd out there on the perimeter, give her space to shoot the basketball. And Azzi Fudd, again, is more of that off-ball player, and you're not going to see her passing it as much. You're going to see her in the catch and shoot. And I think that's really where this duo is going to come to life, is Paige is going to get her points mainly off the ball screens with the mid-range, with the floater going inside, occasionally shooting some threes and knocking those down. And then you're going to see Fudd hanging out on the three-point line, on the wings, in the corners, waiting for those passes. And you see what these two can do together. Again, really, I mentioned that North Carolina State game is the best example of these two playing together and both scoring consistently and showing that star power together. The rest of this UConn roster is going to benefit from these two being fully healthy, because this past season, again, it was one player after another going down with injury for UConn. Caroline Ducharme was out for an extended period of time with a head injury. Nika Mule was out as well. Aubrey Griffin obviously missed most of the season and did not return for the NCAA tournament. Everybody seemed to be out for UConn at one point or another, but if this team can avoid major injuries this season, they're going to be right up there with South Carolina this year. And South Carolina, as the defending national champions, they are coming in as the favorite for the 2022-3 season, as they should. But UConn has a roster that I think can compete, at least on the perimeter. Now, on the interior, that's something that we've talked about on other podcasts. I think that's still a very big issue for UConn. But they are getting some help with Ice Brady coming in. Ayanna Patterson plays on the wing, but she can also play a little bit, maybe at that 4 spot. I think Gino's going to have to play her at that 4 spot at different points in time just to really compete size-wise. And just the physicality that a South Carolina type of team plays with. He's going to have to make some adjustments. But on the perimeter, there is no better duo than Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd. And again, we haven't seen the full body of work yet because both haven't been out on the floor at the same time a whole lot. And had they been, obviously this season would have been a little bit different for UConn. Maybe they get a number 1 seed, and I still think South Carolina wins that championship game because you saw both there. But again, Azzi Fudd didn't play that much in the national championship game because she was under the weather, wasn't feeling well. Only played about 15, 16 minutes in that contest. So if both are back and both are healthy, you're going to have those two along with Ducharme kind of playing that wing spot. You're going to have Nika Mule, Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East Conference. You have Lou Lopez-Senechal coming from Fairfield. We talked about her on a previous podcast. And she's going to be the X-Factor player, I think, for this UConn team. Because we know what we're getting from Bueckers and from Fudd. Ducharme should get a lot more minutes this season with those two, just earning the trust of Gino Auriemma. But Lou Lopez-Senechal, as a veteran player, as someone who's played 4 years of college basketball, getting ready for her 5th season, she's going to come in and bring that veteran presence and is going to bring more scoring punch. She's going to be just yet another scoring threat for this UConn team, and I think she's going to play well off the ball with Paige Bueckers, with Azzi Fudd right there. Nika Mule offensively isn't as much of a threat, so when we're talking about UConn's offense, it's going to go through Bueckers and Fudd at the point guard and at the 2 guard spots. Then you have Ducharme on the wing, and then obviously you have Aaliyah Edwards, who's going to be the top post player on the interior, with Olivia Nelson-Adota going out now in the WNBA with the Los Angeles Sparks. Amari DeBerry is going to be a player that should get more minutes this season. So look at Edwards as obviously that top post player because UConn has not brought in a transfer post player. Obviously, Ice Brady is going to be right there as well as a freshman, and I think she's going to play quite a bit just because of the holes in the post. that UConn has, just because they're lacking a little bit in that area. But again, look for Bueckers and Fudd this season to really get on track, and look for them to really up the ante this season, because Paige Bueckers is going into her junior year. Azzi Fudd going into her true sophomore season. And I think at least for Paige Bueckers is now going into year 3, there is a sense of urgency to win the championship. You know, in the first 2 years, it's been really tough. Going out to Arizona in 2021, and then this past year, losing to South Carolina in the fashion that they did. It was a dominant win for SC, to say the least. So I think you're going to see a super motivated Paige Bueckers, who is putting in work this offseason, going to be fully healthy going into 2022. Same thing with Azzi Fudd. You know, they've been hanging out. They're best friends. They were just at one of the Washington Mystics games. They worked out last offseason prior to this past UConn season, and expect more of the same this offseason. Continue to put in work, get back in the lab, putting up shots, etc. So definitely look for these two to be the most electric duo in women's college basketball, and definitely the best duo in women's college basketball if they can play up to that potential and the expectations that this team has and the expectations that they have as a duo, that everybody is set on them, that they have put on themselves as well. They expect to be the best. If you're going to UConn, you expect to be the best. And we definitely look forward to seeing Paige Bueckers and Azzi Fudd both 100% healthy playing together. And we're going to have a lot more coming up with these UConn podcasts, with transfer portal podcasts, recruiting podcasts. We've got a WNBA podcast coming up as well. Very excited for that. It's our first podcast on the W. We're going to be talking about league expansion. Obviously, that's something a lot of people have been talking about. The lack of roster spots, you know, players getting cut from teams. It's a very big issue right now in the W, and we're going to be talking about that at length in that podcast. So definitely check that one out as well. That will be immediately following this video, so we're going to get this one uploaded and then move over into that podcast. So we definitely hope that you check that one out as well. So again, this has been another presentation of Hoop Central on YouTube. We thank you, the viewer, for taking the time to watch. This is Hamilton Neal signing off. I'll see you soon.